Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, welcome to Journey to Salesforce, your first step in the Salesforce ecosystem. My name is Gaurav Khetrapal. I am a Salesforce MVP, a certified technical instructor, and I've been around in the Salesforce ecosystem for a reasonably long time. I took my first baby steps in the world of Salesforce back in 2007, which was nearly 12 years back. And I'm excited to host this webinar, which should allow all of you to find your own baby steps in the Salesforce ecosystem. So when I started off back then, we did not have something called Trailhead, which is the Salesforce self-learning platform. You're very fortunate to be starting off in the day and age, and Salesforce has built this wonderful platform called Trailhead, which you can see on my screen. This is a fantastic way of learning any product or any framework within the Salesforce ecosystem. You come on the Trailhead website, and there is a learning journey pretty much for anything and everything that you would want to learn. So over the next 1 to 1.5 hours, I'll actually walk you through some of these steps that will be very helpful for you if you are taking your first steps in this journey. So let's get right into it. So the first step is obviously you should go to trailhead.salesforce.com, or even if you go to trailhead.com, it will take you to this URL. The first thing you'll notice here is there are some menu options on the top. There are options to learn. We have something called trails, which are guided learning paths. We have something called trail mixes, which is sort of a playlist if you want to learn some specific things. So there is a playlist or a trail mix for learning Salesforce platform. There is another trail mix for learning Service Cloud. There's another trail mix for learning Commerce Cloud, and so on and so forth. Then we have something which we call as modules. So anytime you want to learn more about a product, you would basically walk through the modules. Some of them would be beginner modules, some of these would be intermediate modules, and some of them would be what we call as advanced modules. Then we also have something which we call as projects. This is really my favorite part of Trailhead. So Trailhead is not just about teaching you concepts, it's really like a show and tell. So you learn a concept, you answer some questions around that concept, and then you try and apply that concept to something which is more like a real life scenario. So it's not just learning theory, but you are actually following it up with some practicals as well, where you actually apply those concepts. And then there are obviously, there is Trailhead Academy, which runs classes taught by certified instructors. And then there are career paths. So if you are new into the Salesforce ecosystem, if you're not sure what is your true karma, or what is your true calling, then there are multiple paths. You could be an administrator, you could be a developer. If you are from a non-tech background, there are career paths for sales managers, marketing managers. And if you have been in the industry and if you aspire to be a technical architect or a certified technical architect, there is a career path for that as well. If you come from a business analyst background, again, there is a career path for that as well. So I'll walk you through all of these steps, but first let's understand how we use Trailhead, the Salesforce self-learning platform. So the first thing you see here, it's actually a free platform. Not all good things in life are free, but thankfully Trailhead is free, and it's very easy to learn. So if you do not have an account, you can click on the sign up link. It will take you to a page where you can actually use some social options. Like if you already have a Salesforce developer org, which again is free, you could use that to sign up. If you have a Google account, a Gmail account, you could use that. You could use your LinkedIn account, you could use your email account. There are other options. If you are a Mark Zuckerberg fan, and if you are on Facebook, you can link it to your Facebook account, or you could simply register it using your email and choose a password, and then you are good to go. So I already have multiple Trailhead accounts, and I'm actually going to use one of them. So once you have signed up, you'll get a verification email, and once you verify your account, you're essentially good to start using the Trailhead website. So since I already have multiple accounts, I'll just use one of them. So I'll click on the login link. This will take me, and the account that I'm using is actually linked to my Gmail account. So it automatically chose login for Google with me. And once I do this, it actually does a single sign on with my Google account, which is fully secure. It does not ask for my password. It just asks for which Google account do I want to use. And as you can see, I have many of them. So it will just ask me for the appropriate Google account which I want to use. It may prompt you for the password of that Google account in case you are not already signed in. And once that is done, you will it will use the single sign-on, and you would come to what we call as the Trailhead homepage. So the URL would be trailhead.salesforce.com/home. So you are now logged into Trailhead. On the top right, you will see your name that you used for registration, the number of badges you have, the number of points you have, and you will also see any in-progress badges that you have, any in-progress trail mixes that you have, any recommendations that Trailhead makes for you based on the information that you filled in when you were registering for Trailhead. So there are a few recommendations which I obviously need to get to. And then the best part about Trailhead is when Trailhead started off, it was kind of an experimental project a few years back. There were a handful of badges limited to primarily the platform and CRM capabilities. But what the Trailhead team has been doing really well over the last 2 years or so, they've been feeding new quality content around a lot of areas which were kind of unheard earlier. So all the exams, once you get certified in any of the Salesforce exams, you can actually do the maintenance of those exams from here. There are new super badges, which is like a mini project. These can get added all the time. And then there are badges around new changes to the framework, new changes to various other products as well. And then there are trending badges. These are badges which are most popular based on the number of people who are doing them. So um, once you get familiar with the Trailhead homepage, the first thing you want to do as a beginner is, especially if you come from a non-Salesforce background, is Salesforce team has devised a trail mix which they call as Journey to Salesforce. So if you, in the search box, if you type Journey to Salesforce, it will give you a certain number of results. So there is a trail mix called Journey to Salesforce Projects. There is a trail mix called Journey to Salesforce Start Your Journey. There are actually a couple of them. This is the one which is most recent. So we will look at this particular trail mix. And this is the trail mix I'll walk you through over the next hour or so, and try and make you understand as to how you can go about it. This contains several projects, it contains several modules, and it contains several links which will be very helpful for you. So let me start off with the first link. This is a link to a product called Quip. Again, if you do not have an account on Quip, it's free. It's like pretty much like Google Spreadsheets, an online version of Google Spreadsheets, but it's a collaborative product. So in the sense that multiple people could be working on the same spreadsheet, editing at the same time, reading at the same time. And it all comes together very nicely in the form of a collaborative environment. So this Quip document again contains some information around how you should start off your Salesforce journey. How do you set up your Trailhead account? How do you set up a developer org? And then it walks through the contents of this trail mix that we are going to cover very shortly. So there is an introduction to Trailhead. You learn about how you create a Trailhead account. This is something which I already walked you through. You learn about what's a Trailhead playground. You build your first application on the Salesforce platform. You learn about the various approaches, which are no code, low code, high code. You learn about the basics of CRM. You learn about the core object model. How do you navigate your way around your org? And then you build your first project, which is like a hello world version of any program that you'll write in any programming language. So here we build a simple recruiting application, and I'll walk you through all the steps involved in that recruiting application. So the idea of this project is to give you exposure to pretty much everything that would be involved in writing a very small project on Salesforce. right from the data model to the kind of validations that you'll have, and how do you enhance this project to kind of become a more real world application. And then we'll also talk about the community aspect of Salesforce. So as I said, I've kind of been around in the Salesforce community for 12 years. Before that, I've been working on C++, on C, on Java, and I've been a part of multiple communities. But trust me, I mean, there is no parallel to what Salesforce has done with its community. It's a global community. They call it Ohana, and there are groups all over the world, and the kind of learning atmosphere and the learning opportunities which Salesforce offers are tremendous. And I'll actually walk you through a little bit of what are the opportunities there beyond this trail mix as well. How do you join your local community? How do you learn with it? And how, most importantly, how do you contribute back to it as well? So let's come back to this trail mix. And as you start completing modules in this trail mix, it will actually keep updating the progress here, and it will also tell you how much time roughly you have left that you need to contribute to this particular trail mix. Then again, how do you join this particular program called Journey to Salesforce? The idea of this program is to encourage, motivate, and prepare people who are from a non-Salesforce background and help them with their Salesforce journey. So this is an initiative which was taken by the Salesforce Trailhead and developer marketing teams last year. I've actually been a part of this from the very beginning, and there are no words to kind of explain how beneficial this has been to a number of people. So there is something called Trailblazer community, which is success.salesforce.com. If you do not have an account, again, you can sign up for it. It's free. It's like one-stop shop where you can get a lot of answers to your questions. You can actually raise ideas. You can join groups around specific things. And Journey to Salesforce is just another group on this. We call that Trailblazer community, also earlier called as Success community. So once you join this group, you will see that there are a number of trail mixes that have been set up for you. And then all participants in this group are encouraged to ask technical questions, seek mentorship. If you are looking for Salesforce knowledge in any specific areas, you can do that. There are a number of people who are a part of Salesforce teams. So Kiran, Vishwa, Shashank, Nitisha, Jerry, they work as all of them work as a part of Salesforce developer marketing team, or the Trailhead team as it's called now. And you can actually see a number of success stories as well, people clearing their certifications. For example, this person cleared the Platform Developer 1 certification. This is not easy by any means, but again, the idea of these trail mixes is that we kind of enable you to take those small steps. Here is another one, Sunil, who's cleared his Platform Developer 1 certification. Some of these people are experienced, and some of these people are actually freshers who have just graduated, and some of them are people who are actually students and as early as their second year, third year, who want to get a head start on Salesforce. They come and join this program, and they've been able to not just get certifications, but also get internship opportunities and get placements based on those as well. So going back to the trail mix. So this was the QIP document, which contains pretty much what we are going to cover. And then this is the Journey to Salesforce Trailblazer community group. Again, feel free to post here on any kind of queries. People here are super helpful. There should be no inhibitions. Any query you have, this is the place to be, especially if you are a beginner. And then there is a task which we call as Intro to Trailhead, which is a very high level overview of Trailhead. And as I told you, Trailhead is a fun way of learning Salesforce. There is a gamification aspect to it. Anytime you complete a badge or a trail or a project, you get a badge. You can show it off on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, social. You can put it on your resume, and it speaks to your knowledge. Let's actually talk a little more about Trailhead basics. So everything from here on is either going to be a module, a task, or a project. So let's talk about some of these modules which will actually help you learn some basic concepts in Salesforce. So let's start with this first module, which talks about Trailhead basics. So what does it actually cover? It talks about how do you get started with Trailhead. So first of all, what is Trailhead? So as I said, it's a self-learning platform, and the best part about it is it's learning while you're having fun. So you have all these characters. This is Astro, one of the mascots of Trailhead, and then Salesforce has a number of other fun characters as well. So learning is actually split into modules, which themselves are broken up into units. So it's kind of granular and modular. To finish a unit, you walk through some concepts, and then you go through a quiz or a challenge, and then you earn some points. And then these quizzes typically have multiple choice questions, and challenges typically have hands-on concepts. So it's not something which you are kind of memorizing, it's something which you are learning a concept, applying it, and then based on that application, you actually earn some points. And that way of learning is very effective. So anytime you apply a concept, you'll never forget. Anytime you memorize a concept, you're likely to forget it in a month, in a couple of months, in a quarter, or definitely in a year. But once you apply a concept, you'll actually never forget. And then you obviously get a new shiny badge on your profile. And then we also have a concept of trails. So trails are groups of modules, which is like a guided learning path. So if you want to learn, for example, a specific product, you want to learn the Salesforce platform, you should follow the Salesforce platform trail. If you want to learn, say, CPQ, you should follow the CPQ trail. So that's how it works. And then we have projects and super badges. So these are, again, you have learned the concepts, what's next? So you apply those concepts and you try and complete the projects, you try and crack the super badges. A super badge is like a mini project. It gives you a good feel of the kind of projects that you will get in the industry once you get into the Salesforce ecosystem. So it's highly, highly recommended that once you complete a trail or a module, you should try and complete those projects and super badges as well. So who is Trailhead for? The short answer and the long answer as well is it's for everyone. So since the inception of Trailhead, I've seen all sorts of people, and I would literally say this includes no boundaries. There are people who have come from non-technical backgrounds, so people who have been business analysts, people who have been into operations, people who have school teachers, people who have been doing odd jobs. This is a wonderful opportunity. And again, I can't emphasize on the fact that, again, in other communities, there are learning resources like these, but they are not free and they are not self-paced. So either you take a class which will charge you like a premium, or you sign up for some courses, you go into a classroom and then you attend them. The best advantage of Trailhead is that you do it at your own pace, you do it from your home, the comfort of wherever you are, and then it's a guided path. So you have steps which walk you through pretty much at every milestone. So and then the best part also is that it's not just restricted to Salesforce. If you are a blockchain enthusiast, you don't even want to if you want to specialize in blockchain and you want to learn Salesforce as well, there is a path for you. If you want to learn, if you come from a legal background, if you want to learn about GDPR or about European Union privacy laws, there are modules for it. If you are a mobile developer, so I started off as a mobile developer, so this is one of the trails I relate to all the time. Is you can actually choose your iOS development path as well. So there are paths for pretty much anyone and everyone. And language is not a barrier, and language and geography should never be a barrier. So even if you cannot speak English, Trailhead is actually available in multiple languages. So there is German, there is Japanese, there is French, Spanish, Portuguese. You can just scroll down to the footer of the page, choose the appropriate language, and then you can, based on the language that you choose. So for example, here I'm on English, and I can choose any other language, and then I could see everything in that specific language. And then Trailhead strongly emphasizes on the philosophy that if it's all text, it can be a little bit intimidating and a little boring to learn. So Trailhead has a lot of videos, a lot of code samples, walkthroughs, screenshots, images, tables and charts, and then there are obviously instructions as well. So there is a famous quote which says, a picture is worth 1,000 words, And I kind of believe that videos, code samples, walkthroughs are worth a million words. And thankfully, that's a philosophy that is embedded right into the heart of Trailhead. So as you kind of as we go along, you'll see that every module or every trail that you pick, you will have some videos, some code samples, which kind of keep things interesting. And as I told, it's not just you learning concepts. It's a lot of storytelling. It's a lot of practical examples and scenarios. So Trailhead is not just for people who are starting off with Salesforce. Even experienced people, when I have to look up something related to a specific concept, I inevitably come to Trailhead and I look up that particular module or that particular trail. And then there's a conscious approach to kind of keep it very casual rather than formal, and that kind of helps you learn in a more fun and positive manner. And then we kind of emphasize the fun aspect to it because it's a gamified platform, and then the more you learn, the more badges you earn, then and the more social reputation you can build off it. So as I said, you sign up for Trailhead, and once you have signed up, you can again choose whatever means you want to sign up: Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, email. And then once you have signed up, you're good to go, and you can log in into your trail. So as I did say that some of the trails and modules that you will be doing are kind of hands-on challenges. So when we say hands-on, it means you've learned a specific concept, and then you need to apply that concept and either do some configuration steps or write some code. So you need something called either a playground or a developer org. So hands-on challenge is a little more involved than a quiz. A quiz is simply some multiple choice questions, but to complete a hands-on concepts, you need to look at the requirements and then do some specific steps either in your org or in your Trailhead playground. It could either be writing an Apex class, creating a Lightning web component, writing a validation formula, or just as simple as doing some configuration, point-and-click configuration in your org or your playground. And I'll also talk about what an org is or a playground is. So what is a playground? So now that you have signed up to Trailhead, you are good to learn concepts, you have access to the theory part of Trailhead. But how do you actually try things? So that's where Trailhead playgrounds come into play. The idea of playground is essentially very literal in the sense that you play around with the concepts and you keep trying things. So it's kind of learning by playing around, learning by making mistakes. And there is a strong philosophy like fail early, fail often, which is basically anytime you're learning, don't hesitate to make mistakes. The more early you make mistakes, the more mistakes you make during your learning path. You might be learning the hard way, but that is also the right way to learn. That actually prepares you well for the future. So a Trailhead playground is an org that is used for hands-on challenges, learning new features, and testing customizations. If you've not created one, you'll automatically get when you create a Trailhead account. And once we come to our first exercise, we will see that by default, a Trailhead playground is already built for us. As I said, the alternative is you can also get a developer sandbox. So if you just go to Google and if you write Salesforce developer or sign up, the first result you get is a page called developer.salesforce.com/signup. That's where you just fill up a form, you specify your name, your email address, your whole company name. And once you fill up the form, it actually creates a developer org for you. That is your instance, that is free for life. And that is where you can also try all your exercises on Trailhead, or you could also use the built-in Trailhead playground. So the choice is entirely up to you. I would also recommend creating a developer org for yourself, because as I said, it's a fully featured edition, fully featured org that is your instance, dedicated to you. Nobody else can access it, and then it's you can keep it over time. So for example, my first developer org that I signed up was way back in 2007, and the best part is that I still use it. Over the last 12 years, it has been updated to, it has gone through several releases, and it's still up to date with the latest feature, and it still has all the beginner code that I wrote 12 years ago. So it's always good to have your own developer org so that you can look back at it and look at the steps that you took when you started your Salesforce journey, and hopefully someday you'll be proud of where you have landed up based on those steps. Okay, so you could use the Trailhead Playground or you could use your org. And anytime you complete a specific module, for example, you complete a quiz or you complete a challenge, you get certain number of points. And these points add up, and anytime you complete a module, you actually get a badge to show off for that particular module. And that badge can also be shown on your social profiles. Okay, so this was about how you get started on Trailhead. If I come back to our trail mix, so this is Trailhead basics, and then if you do sign up for a Trailhead playground, it's very simple to understand how you create a Trailhead playground. So a Trailhead playground is very much similar to a developer org, but the only difference is it is specifically for Trailhead. So it is tied to your Trailhead account, and it comes with Trailhead specific data, and it has some pre-installed unmanaged packages. So unmanaged package, in very simplistic terms, if you have a mobile phone and if you're installing an app on it, in Salesforce terms, we could kind of correlate that one-to-one as an unmanaged package. An unmanaged packet contains some baseline code, some baseline configuration that you would use for your hands-on challenges that you would do on your Trailhead account. Okay, and then there are some additional concepts like, for example, my domain. A my domain is essentially a fully qualified domain that your instance needs to have, and that is again set up in your Trailhead playground. So if you are new, you could actually start off with Trailhead playground as well as sign up for a developer sandbox. But you could use your Trailhead playground so you avoid all these steps until you actually understand what a my domain means or what some of these specific Salesforce terminologies mean. Again, once you get comfortable, you can always switch to your developer org as well. So either one is fine, depending on what you are most comfortable with. So once you've created your Trailhead account, how do you actually create your Trailhead playground? So anytime you get to your first challenge, that is where it will give you an option to create a Trailhead playground, and you could actually have multiple of these as well. And I'll show you how this particular thing works. Okay, so we learned a little bit about Trailhead, the self-learning, fun way of learning Salesforce. We learned about Trailhead playgrounds. We learned about developer orgs, and we learned about how you can get a Trailhead playground, how you can get a developer org. And then let's actually look at a very simple project. And again, we'll build a Lemonade stand app. And it's a simple app to manage a Lemonade stand business. The best part is you'll not even write a single line of code, and you'll actually do your first project in Salesforce. So there are terminologies which Salesforce uses, a terminology called as point and click. And the idea is exactly the same, that you point to a few places, you click, you point to a few other places, you click them. And based on that, you do everything and you do not write any code. That is what we also call as the no code approach. We also have something called as a low code approach, which means you do some things with point and click, but you do write a little bit of code. That's kind of an intermediate stage between no code and high code. And then there is obviously high code. If once you're experienced and there are use cases which cannot be met with point and click approach, you can write code which could be in the form of backend. You could write the data model, you could write triggers, you could write controllers, or on the front end, we had a language called Visualforce earlier. Then we had a framework called Lightning Components. Now we have something called as Lightning Web Components. And again, if you want to learn any of these, it's all there on Trailhead. So as a first step, we will actually write a Lemonade stand app. And let's actually walk through some of the steps of this. So this is like a 90-minute or a 1.5-hour project. And especially if you're a business user. If you do not have a coding background, then I strongly recommend you do this. If you come from a development background, whether that's Java, whether that's .NET, whether that's any other programming language, this should be fairly simple for you. So the first step is you're about to start a business. What is the first thing you do? You create a business plan. So any business which does not have a plan is likely to fail, and we do not want our lemonade stand business to fail. We want, in fact, to turn it into a multi-million-dollar business. So we will create a plan. And then on Salesforce, on some of the modules, you'll actually see that it says Salesforce has two desktop user interfaces, something called as Lightning Experience and something called as Salesforce Classic. So Salesforce as a platform has been evolving ever since the company was founded. So the earlier user experience was called Classic, and the new experience is called Lightning Experience. And Lightning Experience is the preferred way of doing things. But just in case you need to switch to Classics, there is again a module around this which kind of explains how you can switch back to Classic if there is a need for that. So let's actually look at the project. So I would strongly recommend you look at this video, which talks a little bit about the kind of project that we are going to do. All right, so let's continue where we left off. And so we are going to build a simple application, which is a lemonade stand business that we are starting. And this is a video from Dreamforce where some very enthusiastic school kids actually built an app just based on some point and click configuration. And they showcased it at Dreamforce, which is the world's biggest non-profit technology conference. And some of them actually built it off an iPad, which is very impressive. And that's the exact idea, that it's point and click, there is no code involved, and anybody can build it as long as you understand what you're doing. So anytime you're starting off a business, you need to ask certain questions to yourself. What is the product? What are you going to sell? What are the various varieties? How you'll take orders? What kind of questions you'll ask customers? How you'll track the orders? Who are you building this business for? How do you want to report the orders? What are the types? And most importantly, how will you track the revenue? How will you make sure that the business is profitable? And then there is a business planner and a resource guide, which is a zip file, which is available. So just click on that link, and that will actually walk you through some steps around that. And then how do you launch your Trailhead Playground? So for example, now we are in a state where we can launch our Trailhead Playground. So I already have one playground, but I can create another one. And to do that, I'll just choose the option, which is create a Trailhead Playground. And in the background, Trailhead does its own magic, and it creates a new fresh playground for you, which you can then use for doing all the exercises that you want to do on Trailhead, on your specific Trailhead account. It does take a little bit of time when you're doing it for the first time, but again, a Trailhead Playground is something that you'll not create multiple times. Whenever you just start off creating your Trailhead account, you just need one Trailhead Playground. So this is kind of a one-off process, and this does take a little bit of time. So while it's still doing its own thing, just a quick recap. I do recommend that you watch this video, you download these files, and then you try to this project. You do this project on your own. This is your uh, kind of hello world of the Salesforce ecosystem. All right, so still waiting for this playground to be set up. And once it's set up, this launch button will be enabled, and then you will be able to verify that your Trailhead Playground is set up, and you will earn your first 100 points, which is like pat on your back. You've done well so far. You set up a Trailhead account, you set up your own Trailhead Playground, and then you are ready to crack some exercises and earn some more points. So since I already have a Trailhead Playground, so I can just show you what happens if I launch it. It opens another window, and then it launches my playground in that particular window. And this is what we call as lightning experience. So anytime you launch your Trailhead Playground, you will see an interface like this. On the top left, you'll see the Salesforce cloud icon, and then you'll see a menu with a certain number of options. And again, on the top right, you will see certain other options. You will also see this, which we call as the app launcher. So your playground is configured with a number of pre-built apps. So there is an app for service, there is an app for marketing, community, app called site.com, an app called Salesforce Chatter, which is the uh, framework for communication between users and groups. You can call it dubbed as the Facebook for the enterprise, and you can call it as like a social tool for your uh, organization. And then there is content, sales, and then a few other applications as well. And then you also see a certain number of items listed here, which is access to some objects. But let me first walk through your Trailhead Playground. So anytime you log into your developer org, you will not see this particular message. You will only see this particular message when you specifically launch a Trailhead Playground. And then you also have something which we call as a profile. So for example, this is my profile. I have a certain number of usernames, and then I can choose a display density. And I can also move to a classic interface. So instead of using the lightning experience, I can use a classic interface. And then I strongly encourage that first time you log into your Trailhead account, try and click on all these options and try and explore a little bit. So if you go to opportunities and you click all opportunities, these are some of the default data that have been set up in our Trailhead Playground. Similarly, if you go to leads, and if you go to all leads or all open leads, it will show you leads data. If you go to accounts, if you go to all accounts, it shows you all account data, and so on and so forth. You can also have some favorites, which is basically an easy way to navigate. You can also set up some global actions, which is something which is a little more advanced concept, and we'll talk about this in one of the later trainings. If you need to learn some specific concepts, you can actually launch the help and training from here, and then you can go to specific training modules that you need. You can also actually search for specific uh, keywords based search. You can also trigger it from here. And then we also have something called as a setup menu, which is basically any time you need to do any point and click development in terms of configuring objects or configuring anything through the declarative approach, you would typically use this setup menu. So let me actually go back. Let me actually show you um, how you can earn these points once you have launched these, once you have launched your specific playground. Okay, and again, this will verify, this will log into your playground, and it will kind of verify that you have done all the steps. So yay, I earned my first 100 points, which is not really the first 100 because I've been on Trailhead for a while, but I did do 20% of my project. So it now prompts me to go to the next step. And the next step, again, there is a video which we kind of talk through. And again, you should look the video and see what do we talk about. And it then says build a custom object. So custom object, if you come from a database background, if we talk about a database schema, in schema we have tables. So similarly in Salesforce, we have a concept of objects. So if you were to draw a one-to-one analogy, A table in a RDBMS schema or a relational database schema is similar to an object in Salesforce. So you can create an object, and to do that, the steps are fairly simple. And this is what also a typical exercise in Trailhead looks like. It will prompt you for some specific steps. It will prompt you to complete all those steps. And once you kind of complete those steps and launch your playground, and you click on verify step to earn those points, it will actually go and verify that you have done all of these steps. So let me actually show you some of these steps. So let's go and create this particular object. So it says click this gear icon and select setup. So I'm here, I click this gear icon and I click setup. Okay, what should I do next? It says click the object manager tab next to home. So it says click the object manager tab, which is next to home. So this is the object manager tab. Okay, and this is my setup menu. And you will use pretty much all these options in either this trail mix or in one of the subsequent trail mixes. So for this particular exercise, we need to choose the object manager. So let's actually choose the object manager. So when I choose the object manager, it shows me that there are 36 items, which means this is analogous to having 36 tables in my database schema. And I currently have 36 objects in my org. So this is my org. An org could be my developer org, or it could also be my Trailhead playground. So then it says click create and click create, select custom option. So this is the create option. And then I need to choose custom object, which is basically now I'm creating a new table within Salesforce to store certain information. And then I need to fill in certain information. So I can just copy paste this information. Something which all developers love to do is Control C, Control V, which is copy and paste. Old habits die hard, whether that's Java, .NET, or Salesforce. So we will continue with that. So we will use label as drink order. We will use the plural name as drink orders. We will call it object name as drink underscore order, which is already set up for us. And then we will call it as record name as drink order number. So record name is drink order name. Let's change it to drink order number. And the data type is auto number, which means it will automatically increment. Once it creates one record, it will then be incremented. And then we'll choose a display format. So it will show up like D-0000 and 0001 and so on and so forth. It will just keep incrementing itself. And then we start off with one. So actually the first one will be D-0001. All right, so it says under optional features, select allow reports. Again, this is something you will learn in some of the subsequent trail mixes as to what are the implications of reports. And under object creations, it says select launch new custom tab wizard after saving this custom object. So here is this particular option, which is launch new custom tab wizard after saving this custom object. The idea here is I'm creating this particular object and I want it to be easily accessible to me in my menu. So what I'll do is I will create a tab for this, which will show up in my menu. So it's easily accessible. And then it says click save. And then there are these buttons on the top as well as on the bottom. So if you are on the top of the half of the page, you don't actually need to scroll down. Similarly, if you are on the lower half of the page, you don't need to scroll down. So once you click save, brilliant. We have created our custom object, which is for drink orders, and now we are creating a tab for it. And we are creating a tab for our custom object called drink orders. What we need to choose is now a tab style. A tab style, each of these tabs has its own style. And by default, you do need to choose a style for a tab. So if I just try to avoid choosing a tab style, and if I try to click next, it tells me that the tab style is mandatory. So I do need to choose it. and I really like apples, so I'll go ahead and click choose apple. And then it says, okay, tab style, choose any image. They choose the cup. I prefer the apple. I'm not a coffee person. And then click next, next, and save. So let's do, and it's always a good idea to add a description. Again, something which developers are lazy and never do. But I'll actually go ahead, drink order, custom object, and I'll click next. Okay. So although it says next, next, which means you can choose the default options, but let me actually explain a little bit here as well. So anytime you create an object, you actually choose which user profiles for which you want to enable this particular custom tag. And based on those profiles that you choose, this tab will be available. It will not be available for the other tabs. And you can actually choose which profiles you want to give access and which profiles you do not want to give access. So for the sake of simplicity, I'll just click next, which means default access for everybody. And then it also asks us at which particular custom apps we want to give it access to. And these apps are the apps, some of these apps are listed here as well. So for now, again, since I'm kind of doing my first assignment, so I'll just pick default. But in future, when you actually do real-time projects, you'll be very careful with kind of access that you give away, not just to profiles, but also to access. One of the golden rules of data access is only give access to users and apps for which they need access. Do not give unnecessary access to an app or a user who does not need it. Okay, so let's click save. Once we do that, our custom object is created and our tab is also created. Okay, and then we have a custom object and we also have a tab. So looks like we have done all the steps that we needed to do here. In the next step, we'll actually add custom fields. But since for this specific tab, step, I did all the steps. So let's actually see if I have done all the steps. Again, when I click verify, it will try and verify that I did all the steps. And if I did miss some of these steps, it will actually give me a well-formed error. So anytime you get an error like that, just look at that error and try and fix that error based on the clear descriptions. But in my case, I did everything right. So I get another 100 points. I move to 40%, and then I can tackle the next step. Again, watch the video, follow the steps, and then once you have done the steps, launch a playground. So for example, I did not do any of these steps, and if I click verify step to earn 100 points, it did not add any custom fields, so ideally it should fail, and it will give me an error which is kind of a clear indication of why it failed. So it says could not find a flavor under a underscore C field on the drink order, because if I go and I see my object and if I see the fields and relationships, I have not created any fields. I just created the custom object. I'm not going to do all of these steps, but again, the idea is simple. I just wanted to show you that it's very simple to follow these steps here. Do each of these steps, launch your playground if you have already not launched it, and then verify that step. And once you complete all of these steps, you actually get that particular batch. And again, watch the videos, follow the steps, launch your playground. If there are errors, try and fix those errors. If you cannot fix those errors, there is this link which is Trailhead Help. Try and search for your specific error here. There will always, most certainly be a scenario where your error will actually be captured here. Otherwise, you can actually go and either post it in the forums. If you believe there is a bug, you can share the feedback, or you can also connect with the community on, again, the success community, and ask questions there. And then there are a bunch of topics on which you can get help. So anytime you get stuck in a hands-on challenge, you can actually access this particular help. So this will help you complete this particular step. So if I go back to my trail mix, so we talked about Trailhead basics, we talked about Trailhead playground, and assuming you did the last step, you will be able to do your first project as well. And then let's look at another module, which is CRM for Lightning experience. So let me launch this specific module. So when Salesforce started off, their core offering was a CRM platform. CRM, in very simple words, is a customer relationship management platform. So any capabilities that you need to manage your customers is called a CRM platform. We call it as the customer success platform, which is not just for relationship management, not just to track leads and opportunities, but also to help you sell, service, market, and analyze and connect with your customers. So it's kind of a 360-degree platform with multiple aspects to it. There is a service aspect to it, there is a sales aspect to it, there is a marketing aspect to it, and so on and so forth. So in this module, you will learn a little bit about CRM, what a CRM is, how is data organized. So as I told you, loosely the analogy is a CRM is like a database. Anytime you create an object, you are creating a table in the database. Anytime you actually add fields to an object, you're actually adding columns to the database table. And anytime you actually add, anytime actually you create records in the custom objects or the standard objects, you're actually adding rows in your particular database table, or you're essentially adding data to that. So typical DDL versus DML. DDL is when you're creating the schema or the object structure. DML is when you are actually doing data manipulation. And that's the analogy loosely that most enterprise platforms follow, and Salesforce is no exception. So you will learn about objects, you learn about fields, records, objects, orgs, apps. I've already explained some of these. An app is basically a logical grouping of certain fields, objects, permission, and functionality that you would build to support a specific business process. And then there is a concept of standard objects and custom objects. So some objects which are pre-built, like accounts, opportunities, leads, contacts, since they already exist in the data model, they are called standard objects. Anytime you create your own objects, since they are not a part of the standard object model, we call them custom objects. Okay, and in the last Lemonade project example, we created our own custom object called drink orders. Okay, and this is how the standard objects are related to each other. So I do strongly recommend you try and emphasize on these concepts, because these are core CRM concepts which will actually go a long way in building your understanding of Salesforce as a CRM platform. And then Lightning experience, you have already seen it. So this is what we call, not this, but yeah, this is what we call as Lightning experience. One of the advantages of Lightning experience is it works wonderfully well on phones and tablets as well, with an app which we call as Salesforce One app. So it is an optimal display on desktops as well as phones as well as tablets. That is the USP of Lightning experience. And then Lightning came around, I think, around 3 years back or 4 years back. Before that, we had Classic interface, and then that Classic interface also went through several iterations. So you may actually come across terms like it's Lightning, non-Lightning, or Lightning. And then there is obviously a good reason as to why it's called Lightning, because it's much better in terms of performance, and some notes around why Salesforce made the move to Lightning experience and why you should actually use Lightning experience as compared to Classic. And then we did look at our homepage in Lightning experience. You can customize it to see a bunch of information that is of interest to you. And then we also have opportunities. Again, you should look up this documentation to understand what are opportunities, how it ties to the core CRM data model, what are accounts, what are contacts, and how do we usually track it. And then how do we actually view data? So we have a concept of list views and detail views. Anytime you see objects, records listed in a tabular format, that is a list view. And then if you click on any of these and if you look at the specifics of a specific of a particular record, that is what we call as detail. Salesforce also has what we call as Kanban views. So if you come from a Scrum or a Kanban background, there are visualizations available, especially for objects like opportunities, which offer a Kanban view as well. And then Salesforce has fairly advanced reports and dashboard capabilities as well. And again, these will be covered at length in multiple trail mixes. Okay, so once you complete this, you will get 100 points, similar to what we did earlier. So, and then this would cover the CRM concepts. Next up, I would recommend you look at some platform basics, which would again talk you through how you get started with the platform, understanding some use cases, understanding the overall architecture. And again, there is a lot of storytelling involved here. So you try and understand the use cases based on specific storytelling. You play certain roles. So for example, we have Michelle, who's so we'll actually look at a sample app called Dreamhouse Reality, and we'll look at two actors. So Michelle, who's a real estate broker, and Angelo, who's a Salesforce administrator. And then this would actually walk you through certain steps of how you build this specific application. Again, you will be asked to launch your Trailhead Playground, and you will actually get your first taste of how you customize the Salesforce platform. So this will give you a good practice of how you customize Salesforce platform. So in the earlier module or the project, we dealt with custom objects. Here you'll actually deal with a standard object called contact. You'll add a new field to it, and then based on that field, you will do certain manipulations. And since this requires you to do a little more steps than compared to earlier, you get more points as well. So yeah, it's all fairly straightforward. Follow these steps, carefully read the exercises, and make sure you spell everything as it is. There should be no typos, so I strongly recommend anytime you see a field like this, just copy it, paste it to wherever you need to change things in your playground, and then make that change. And please also be very careful about the casing. In general, you should always try and keep the same casing as in the exercises, and that will make sure you do not run into any casing errors. Okay, so this will actually walk you through the platform basics, which gives you a solid foundation. And then you should actually tackle what we call as platform development basics, which is basically till now you have essentially been doing some configuration. This is where we actually introduce you to a little bit of code as well. So you understand some building blocks. We talk a little more about the Dreamhouse app, the specific use cases. You actually install this app, and then we customize it in the subsequent steps. So first step is you get started with the platform. The second is you actually understand the concept of metadata. This is basically the attributes about data. You learn in detail about objects, fields, and records. And then you understand what is the overall architecture of Dreamhouse, how is the data model linked. It talks about the two approaches which I mentioned, the point and click or the declarative approach. And then the second approach is obviously the code approach. And then we introduce you to some very lightweight coding concepts, some lightning components, which is, if we talk about the MVC architecture, the components sit on the view layer, and then they have something which they trigger as on the controller layer, which is called Apex controllers as well. So you will actually write your first few lines of code as part of this particular module. And then we also talk about Visualforce, which is again a front-end framework which Salesforce introduced. We do recommend using Lightning components in favor of Visualforce for all feature development. And then you will actually use these concepts in some of the later trade mixes. And then you'll also learn about how do you extend the Salesforce platform using an API-driven approach, uh, using something which is Heroku, another platform as a service which is offered by Salesforce, where you can actually do development in Python, Node.js, PHP, Java, with some amazing starter packs. And some use cases around IoT, chatbots, other places where you can actually do mashups and integrations. So you'll learn a little bit about these as well. Okay, so that will cover everything about platform development basics. And then you'll come to data modeling, which is when we talk about the MVC architecture, so model, view, and controller. This is where you will talk about the model, or when we talk about databases, this is our DDL, which is the data definition language. So you learn in detail about what are standard objects, what are custom objects, how do you create objects. Again, I showed you how to create a simple object, what are the various kinds of fields, how do you create custom fields, how do you create custom records, and some best practices in terms of whenever you are doing customizations. Then you will actually learn about something which is object relationships. So if you come from the RDBMS world, we had something called like ER diagram, which was basically we had multiple entities and we had relationships between those entities. So here, again, you will create objects and you will create kind of relationships between them. There are two main types of relationships, lookups and master detail. There's one more called junction, which will be introduced a little later. But these are core concepts, so it's important to understand them right. This module will cover what is a master detail, what are the use cases in which you should create a master detail relationship. You will do some exercises on how to create a lookup, how to create a master detail, and then you'll obviously launch your playground and do these steps as well. And we also have something which we call a schema builder, which is basically a visual way of looking at your overall schema, looking at each object, the fields it has, and the kind of relationships it has. And then again, you will actually do some exercises around creating an object, creating some fields in the schema builder. So this covers what we call as the data modeling or the data definition layer. And I would recommend once you've done this, you come to data management, which is basically you have created all your tables, you've created all the objects. We talk about how do you import data, how do you get data from external sources into these objects. So this module will walk you through some concepts around that and also some exercises as to how you use certain tools for importing data. And then obviously the other aspect is if you want to do an external or a reverse kind of flow, which is you want to export data, you already have data in your Salesforce objects and you want to export it to another source, then you use certain different tools and then you understand those tools in this specific particular module as well. So let me actually close some of the tabs. Again, developers typically are lazy, so typically end up with a zillion tabs which they are not using. So just to avoid any confusion, let me close all the tabs which I don't need. So once you're done with data management, you would have covered a fair bit of this trail mix, and the only other portions remaining would be reports and dashboards. And this is especially important for people who come from a business analyst background, or especially even people with the QA or project management background. Salesforce has some really advanced reporting and dashboarding capabilities. So this module will actually walk you through what are the typical use cases in which you will use reports, what kind of reports will you use, what are dashboards, what kind of dashboards can you build. And again, the second part will actually talk you through a tool called Report Builder, which is basically a drag and drop tool which lets you create reports of different kinds. How do you format reports to make the report output look visually intuitive and impressive? How do you visualize your data using something which we call as Lightning Dashboard Builder? How do you introduce concepts like charts and tables? And how do you kind of extend your overall reporting strategy with App Exchange? So while Salesforce does offer fairly advanced and sophisticated reports and dashboard capabilities, um, not everything that you will need in your reports and dashboards will come out of the box. So there are two ways. Either you can build your own stuff, or you can actually look up App Exchange, which is basically a marketplace for pre-existing applications. So anytime you want to build something or you need something, you can either build it yourself or look up the App Exchange and see if somebody else has already built it. It posts a number of free apps as well as paid apps. So essentially, you avoid reinventing the wheel and you use something which has already been built by others. That should cover your reports and dashboards for Lightning experience. Again, follow the steps in the exercises, do the exercises on your developer or your playground. If you run into issues, post it in the forums, look for the error messages carefully, and then try to resolve those yourselves. That is the natural learning process. And then you customize Salesforce objects. So basically try and add multiple standard fields, multiple custom fields. You learn what are pick lists, what are dependencies between fields. You learn how you create something called as filters. Uh, you create formula fields, which is basically anytime you need to do certain manipulations on an object, you want to store certain information based on some calculations, you use formula fields. We introduce you to the concept of record types, page layouts, which is basically how a particular uh, object or how an object would look like on a specific layout. And then we also introduce you to a couple of concepts which are related to field history tracking and validation tools. Again, similar philosophy, go through each step, follow the concepts, learn the concepts, follow the steps in the exercises, do them on your playground. It's a repeatable process. Once you do it on one of the modules, it kind of becomes a repeatable process. And then we introduce you to a app called Recruiting App, which is kind of a super project. So you will do the first step in this trail mix for your super project, which is you will build a data model for your recruiting app. So you'll create a bunch of custom objects, you'll learn what is a junction object, you'll create some relationships, and you will create some fields for your object model. So this will actually create the overall data model for this particular recruiting app, which is a super project that you will do as part of the journey to Salesforce. And you will build this app end to end over the course of several trail mixes. And once you have done this, you are pretty much done with this particular trail mix. There is one module which you should definitely do is learn about Trailblazer community groups. So you essentially meet Trailblazers, anybody who's on the Trailhead platform, no matter if they're just starting off or if they've been around for forever, it doesn't matter. Everybody is a Trailblazer. Everybody is here to learn. And you will actually meet several Trailblazers. So Alison Park from Chicago, she's a Trailblazer. And then you will learn about chatter groups on Success Community. You'll learn about community groups. So all over the world, you'll have community groups and you'll have group leaders who continue to inspire. For example, this is Atul Gupta. He's based out of India and he runs a community group. He's also a Salesforce MVP. And I strongly recommend you join a community group around you. Most of the groups have either monthly or quarterly events where the single objective of everybody who's present there is to learn and help others learn. And if there is not a community group around you, take that initiative. You can start your own community group and you can actually become a group leader. So if you are in an area where there are no groups in the vicinity, take your first step, start a community group, engage others around you, and nobody will ever look back. And then this would actually set you up for the future trail mixes, and this would also enable you on your journey to Salesforce. So this was a kind of a walkthrough for you in terms of the first steps that you should take in your journey to Salesforce. And this is the first trail mix that you will be doing as part of this particular program, which is Journey to Salesforce. We will shortly be coming up with the next step, which is around trail mix number 2 for Journey to Salesforce. I strongly recommend you to keep up with all these webinars that we'll be producing for you. If you have questions, please post it in the chatter group on Journey to Salesforce and reach out to us. All feedback is welcome. And with that, I wish you good luck, and we will see you in the next webinar, which would be for trail mix number 2. So I wish you all the best, and in your Trailblazer journey, in your journey to Salesforce, and I'll see you again with another webinar. Thank you so much.